By now, you would have seen the brand new release of the TAYLORMADE BRNR mini driver, retailing at £369. It's going to climb, 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 and then come down like a wedge. We can almost hit our 5 wood somewhat better. And if we put to one side the marketing that TaylorMade is saying this driver will give you, I have to say I'm a big fan of the aesthetics and the throwback to the old BRNR series. But let's not get confused, this is a club to plaster over your flaws in your golf game, and that's exactly what we're going to cover in this video. Number one, what exactly does a mini driver give you that a traditional driver doesn't? Number two, why does it help? Very similar to you guys loving your 5 wood off the tee and can't hit your driver for toffee. Number three, what type of golfer will this actually benefit? Because I'm all for making this game a bit easier. Number four, the downsides of a mini driver, and pardon the pun, could you just be burning money? And then lastly, number five, if you haven't got £369 to experiment with, is there some cheaper alternatives for you to go down the route of? Yep, she will do. What does a mini driver give you that a traditional driver doesn't? Number one, it's got more loft. Number two, it's got a shorter shaft. And number three, a slightly smaller head that potentially is going to help you focus on finding the middle. And this is the whole reason why drivers are so difficult to hit. They're the longest club in the bag. They're the lowest lofted club in the bag. Not to mention you've got a lovely big face that you can pretty much hit all over, just so that the ball goes forward. And even though they're designed to go the longest, sometimes we can almost hit our 5 wood somewhat better. And the big reason for this is that the ball has no idea what club you're hitting it with. If your launch angle is too low, if you come down on the ball too much, your swing path isn't neutral, no matter how fast you swing it, the ball isn't going to go anywhere. Not to mention the shot shape is somewhat uncontrollable. But this game is all about averages, and a potential 10, 15 more yards with a driver isn't necessarily worth the risk if you're only hitting 3 out of 14 fairways. Hence why a lot of us opt for a fairway wood that on the good one isn't going to go as far as the driver, yet we're going to be in play that much more often. And even though we swing it slower, maybe didn't get as good of a strike, hence the spin rate being lower, we get pretty much a similar amount of distance on well average. And that's all a mini driver is designed for. Added launch to help get the ball up in the air, potentially more backspin, which ultimately helps swamp any side spin that you put on the ball, not to mention shorter length of shaft, meaning you got more chance of finding the middle of the club face, and let's be honest, a tiny bit of a placebo effect, which let's be honest, doesn't necessarily hurt any golfer. Today's test subject is the TaylorMade SLDRS mini driver, and thanks to the boys at Replay Golf lending this to myself, and I will talk about other variations of mini driver that's potentially worth going in the bag, but let's say a tiny bit less than £369. This club here is masking over a fault in our swing, especially with the driver. If we could all hit the driver well and accurate, let's be honest, no one's going to replace it, as anything more lofted and shorter length in shaft is ultimately not going as far. But there's two types of players that I think this club would be very good for, especially when trying to reduce your scores on the course. Player A, the person that swings the club incredibly fast. But for player A that has an incredibly fast club head speed, sadly means for that player that leaves their club face slightly open at impact or slightly closed, if their spin rate with their normal drivers around 2,000 and they put 1,000 worth of side spin on the ball, see you later, 40, 50, 60 yards out to either side of the fairway. However, with a mini driver that has astronomical amount of backspin, i.e. in the high 5,000s, if you were to put 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 worth of side spin on that, it's going to climb, 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 and then come down like a wedge. The benefit isn't big distance. The benefit is you're still going to be in play. And for that typical player, that's why they love their 5-wood. That's why they potentially like a mini driver or potentially like a driving iron. Smaller head, more likely to find the middle, shorter shafts. They don't need help getting the ball down the fairway. They just need help with the bad shots, i.e. the club face being a tiny bit open or closed. We then have player B, who potentially has a low lofted driver, low spin driver, because they believe that's going to help them get more distance. Don't potentially swing it that fast. Oh, mind you, let's tee it up a tiny bit higher. But for the life of them, can't figure out why their driver doesn't go any further than their fairway wood or their 5-wood. Again, player B would be happy with that shot on the golf course, 255 yards. Okay, relatively decent amount of club head speed, but they've come across it, out to in, and they've come down on it, which sadly means their club face had to be closed at impact, meaning their launch angle is so low, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Meaning player B is more often than not happy for 220 yards, 225 yards, with the same swing, but then more consistency, more likely to hit that ball down the middle. Oh, there she is. The more loft for a player that hits down on the ball, comes across it, helps keep that ball up in the air, even on the good and bad shots. Still down into it, still across it, but you can see our launch angle much higher. And naturally, because we've got more backspin, it looks like the ball's actually gone straighter. And then quickly, I'll add a third one, player C, that comes again across it, steep, but doesn't swing it as fast. Let's go 85 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, 89 miles an hour. That added launch is going to help keep the ball up in the air. If you've ever struggled to get any spin on a driver, loft is definitely your friend, meaning you get a decent amount of spin, and as I said, the ball doesn't know what you're hitting it with. That's why 50 miles an hour slower of a swing, we've only lost 20 yards from, well, player A. And that's a brief explanation of these 3 clubs, all different brands, all different manufacturers, yet this is going to help the golfer find more fairways and not go as far. Once in a blue moon for all 3 of those players, this will go the furthest, but then punishes you on the bad shots that it's not even worth the extra 10, 15 yards. Hence why a mini driver somewhat makes sense as you blend the accuracy of this with somewhat the help of distance with this. But let's talk downsides, as that all sounds in theory very good. Essentially a strong, powerful fairway wood that's going to give you another 10, 15 yards, but it is less lofted. It is less spinning, meaning that it is going to be less forgiving than your fairway wood. Not to mention, with a big driver head, at least you're going to find the face on the first tee in front of your mates, and a couple of standard by outside the clubhouse. Because let's not get it twisted, a very decent player that can control their driver would never opt for this because, well, they're just as consistent and long with their actual driver. Which brings me on to the fact that this is a training aid. This is a plaster over the fault. Ultimately, should you spend £90 on a mini driver for your society days over the course of the summer, and then invest the other £300 that you would put into a brand new burner in driver lessons, so that eventually you can get all the benefits of distance with your driver and still have a semi-level of accuracy that is actually worth taking off the tee box. Because for a lot of you guys that are starting this game and swing at 95, 100 miles an hour, you're athletic, you played other sports, sadly, this will help in the short term, but no matter how hard you swing it, no matter how fast you hit it out the middle, because it is more lofted, because it is a shorter length in shaft, you're never going to hit it anywhere near as far as your actual driver. I could hit that at 130 miles an hour and still get exactly the same distance because that's astronomical. So that's all you need to know about mini driver, and if you're still interested in getting one, I don't blame you. TaylorMade SLDR or a TaylorMade Aero Burner driver, I think are great choices around the 90 to 70 pound mark. Sadly, with both options, they do wear quite easily, not to mention with a lot of those players that this would suit, you are going to see these sky marks because they do come steep and they do close that club face, hence why that leading edge is always going to be in front of the golf ball. If you want to go a tiny bit newer, I would actually look at the TaylorMade original one. It's floating around 200 to 220 pounds. It's adjustable unlike these, and again that is a bit of an added bonus for you guys not quite knowing how much distance or forgiveness you're wanting. If you want an ultimate forgiveness one of these, I highly recommend the more off the better. As I've shown, the backspin is going to help with the side spin off the tee. And then lastly, the last release from TaylorMade themselves, the 300 series, but it is still going for around £300, which for a plaster over your mistakes or potentially a placebo effect you're looking for this summer, I think it's just a bit too much money, and I would save £200 personally, go for something like this, and maybe just get 3 half-an-hour lessons on your driver. So guys, there you have it, cheaper versions of the TaylorMade Burner Mini driver. If you like this video, you might like to check out these underrated irons up the top here that you probably haven't heard of.